Greetings, everyone, and welcome. Looking forward to this joint information video between Professor Gerdes and myself because a lot of crazy things happened really overnight U.S. time when Vladimir Putin went and christened a sub. So I asked
Yeah,
Professor this morning, have you heard anything about the submarine? He says, well, just a little bit. And I said, hey, man, I got the video. So looking
yeah.
forward to talking about it.
It's March 28th, 2025. We need to say the date because when you look back at this, today's events are kind of weird. Not just what happened yesterday with Putin and the sub, which Greg translated, and then with what happened with the minerals deal with Zelensky's responses, which Greg translated. So, yeah, let's get into it and
Let's
see
get
what we
into
see.
it. It's kind of crazy because depending on what time zone you're in or how much you're paying attention, you woke up to news today that was like this was the headline on Reuters. Putin suggests temporary administration for Ukraine to end the war. UN level put a government in. What happened overnight and what actually happened
Oh,
was
hold on a second. Except there already is a government there. He can't unilaterally go and say that. There is just because he calls them Nazis doesn't make them so. And just imagine how outrageous it would be if one government could call another government illegitimate like that, and then have the UN administratively take over. So this is a non-starter. But I mean, I think he's doing well. I know I'm going to get in trouble for this with some people, but I think he's doing what Trump does, which is just throwing up ideas, throwing it against the wall, and seeing if anything sticks. Because if it doesn't stick, no harm, no foul. And if it does stick, then he has something. And so I think that that's the way that he's operating here.
I would agree with that. The difference that I see, the step that he takes it further is he'll actually begin to call pseudo halfway facts. For example, in this suggestion, the video you're going to see, he actually calls out the U.S. Congress on actions that they have taken over the years, and he tries to use that
Yeah.
against Ukraine. So it's interesting, very similar process, but he takes it a step further, and he's a master. That's all it's to
And
it.
he's got a propaganda machine that's far better than just tweeting out some things on Truth Social.
No
His
question.
his propaganda machine is even getting Grok to show up about a third of the time with his narrative. That's crazy.
It's the power of that machine that has been built into this world for decades, and they
Hmm.
are at least one of the best at it, to be very fair. Okay, so I'm going to give you the bullet points first, Prof, and then I'll show you the video and then we can discuss it. So we're going to go
Yep.
to the first one first. Putin on the submarine. This is what I call it. He was there, he was christening a new sub, and then there is a 37-minute video that is filmed on a cell phone by his personal reporter, Zarubin. This is why it's not went like Twitterland and Blue Sky, because unless you follow Zarubin, a lot of this video is not out there. I follow
Mhm.
Zarubin. So I have the 37-minute video. The audio's not that good, but I did the best I could. And he's literally sitting, having some tea and cookies, and having a talk with the guys. He's christened the new sub. He's made some appointments talking about the war. He made a new general. He's sitting there like a dictator. So here we go first. He says, we are not the initiators of this conflict. There was a,
So who started it then, and why? How? How
he's going to
exactly does
tell
that
you.
work?
He says
Yeah.
there was a 2014 coup initiated by Western countries. He then
Mm.
says we were patient for 8 years and tried to resolve this peacefully. We were forced to protect Crimea, Lugansk, and Donetsk. Ukraine was carrying out genocide in the east. We had an agreement in 2022 with Ukraine. Now, those agreements are impossible and destroyed by the UK. And he's talking about the rogue UK guy that came early in the war making all the waves, Boris Johnson. Here's the first video.
Were not the authors or initiators of the outbreak of hostilities, which began after the 2014 coup in Ukraine, supported by Western countries. After that, fighting actually started in southeastern Ukraine. For 8 years we tried to resolve these issues and problems peacefully. we were forced to protect Crimea, Crimeans, and Sevastopol residents, persistently seeking to resolve Donbas and Lugansk issues peacefully. As it later turned out, and everyone knows this well now, the Ukrainian authorities and Western handlers essentially deceived us, unfortunately. Former leaders who led some major Western countries at the time, namely French President Hollande and German Chancellor Merkel, stated publicly without hesitation that they needed the Minsk agreements only to rearm the Ukrainian regime and prepare it for hostilities with us. But over the course of 8 years, people living in Donbas, Lugansk, and Donetsk were subjected to outright genocide in the literal sense. Western backers of the Ukrainian regime turned a blind eye, forcing us to attempt to end the war that began in 2014 by armed means. We didn't start it, but even when this conflict escalated in 2022, we still proposed resolving all issues peacefully. Moreover, as I've said many times, we reached an agreement with Ukraine during talks in Istanbul on issues now deemed impossible to resolve, like denazification. The Ukrainian side drafted and signed it, all was fine, but then their European curators, particularly from the UK, arrived.
So there you have it, sitting hanging with the boys, and in 90 seconds, how much info did he put out there of pure evil?
So what I was going to say before you went right to the clip was go back to those talking points.
Okay.
All
Okay,
those
do that.
talking points that he had on there were all the things that Russia has done and blaming the West or Ukraine for doing. It's fascinating that they have the audacity to say things that are exactly what they're doing and blame their enemies for them. And you see this time and time and time again. It's just fascinating, and they say it with a straight face.
He's sitting there point blank, very articulate, not
Mhm.
emotional, like calling the facts. And I want to keep this direct on task here because I've got more of this submarine video that's like this, shocking. But we see these talking points not only in America as they carried out by those that take this narrative and run with it like MAGA, but even in other countries and around the world, these are a lot of the same talking points that people will repeat because they've been
Yeah.
subjected to this information.
Just wait till Witkoff's on the Sunday programs.
Exactly right. And this is the same exact narrative, and it's coming directly from him. Let's go to page 2 now. Putin on the submarine. He said, I think the new U.S. president wants to end this conflict. There are reasons, but I will not discuss those. Quote. Now, here's what's interesting. The conspiracy theorist will absolutely run with this. If they get
Oh, and they
hold
make up
of
all
this.
kinds of stuff. Oh, he's a plant. He's a
He's a plant,
Manchurian
he's an
candidate.
agent. They're
on the
doing a
take.
big, yes. But these are the reasons they run with those narratives. Putin
Sure.
is brilliantly fueling that narrative on purpose. He
Mhm.
continues, we want peace, but we must, as he stated for months now, address the root causes of this situation. We must secure Russia for the long term. We will work with any partners, not only the USA, but China, India, Brazil, South Africa, BRICS, and of course, North Korea. The crux of the
Nice.
issue is the neo-Nazi regime.
So I've talked about this before, but if they were really serious about Ukraine being a threat, they would have established grab those 4 oblasts, and then instead of making them part of Russia, make them the demilitarized zone.
Absolutely.
That's what they would have done if they were really serious about how we need this buffer space between. But that's not what they did. What they did was grab it and make it Russia. So they're not serious about that sort of thing.
My original thought when this war broke out and then it went beyond 10 days, and I said, okay, we have a real war here now. At those points, even early in the days, talking to my Ukrainian buddies and friends, they said they want all the way to the Dnipro. They want the Dnipro all the way out to Kherson, and they want to also take Odessa. They want to cut us completely off from the Black Sea.
That is where the smart money is for military analysts that I believe and trust. That's what they want to do. They want to half the country and then cut it off from the Black Sea.
Yes. And then that narrative kind of went to the side away after Ukraine's counteroffensive and we took back a lot of territory. But man, it sure is surfacing again. Anyway, take a peek at this video. Here it is. Putin on the submarine.
Everyone's watching closely. I think the new US president sincerely wants to end this conflict. There are reasons, but I won't go into them now. I believe it's genuine, but the conflict I mentioned is complex. It needs thorough discussion. We're for peaceful solutions. I've said this before. We should approach it carefully from the start. Third, we're for peaceful solutions, but we must address the root causes of the current situation. We need to ensure Russia's long-term security. Any step toward this goal will be welcomed by us, and will work with any willing partners. This includes not just the US, but also China, India, Brazil, South Africa, all BRICS nations, and others like North Korea, with whom we have an agreement. There's an issue that's often mentioned in passing. I've touched on it too. The crux of it is this. It was passed by Congress. The US Congress labeled this group as terrorist, anti-Semitic, and neo-Nazi. But since then, nothing's changed. They've stayed the same. What's really different? Nothing.
All right. Now, so I've teased you for the next video that's coming up at the end about the Congress and the neo-Nazis and the Azov, specifically he's referring to there. But you hear him openly stating about the partners that it will work with, not only the USA, and we want peace, we must have security, and we have to destroy the root causes of this situation.
Mhm. As he was talking, I was thinking, this is video you won't see anywhere else. So if I use that as a title, except for Greg,
Yeah.
but that's an awkward title. But yeah, nobody else is showing this. We can't find this anywhere else. It's just because, who you're following where, and then being able to translate it. So what's interesting is he has some truth, and then he, with the truth, adds some non-truth to make it very untrue. So he's talking about the Azov. Well, they were labeled a neo-Nazi group or whatever, or a terrorist group. What has changed? Oh, but nothing has changed, he says. But no, that's not. They were labeled this, but they were also not kept there. They're years ago. That was
repealed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was repealed. And I'm actually going to show everybody watching that on the video. And this was the point I was making earlier. He's a master at mixing a little bit of truth, where some things halfway have happened, and then he'll turn that narrative completely. It's master propaganda right there.
So Satan, has God told you not to eat of any fruit in the garden?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, yeah. I mean, so it's kind of twisting it.
Open partnership with not only the USA, but China, India, South Africa, Brazil, of course, BRICS nations, and of course, North Korea, because we have a contract with them. I
think this is the most bizarre thing. Like, I don't see Trump going for that. But imagine Trump realigning with the BRICS. Like, what? I just don't see that. I mean, maybe I hope I'm not wrong, but
you do see where Putin just lumped us with the BRICS.
Oh yeah, I see what he's trying to do.
Exactly. All right, let's go to the third one. Putin on the submarine, and we're going to dive in more to the Azov now and the U.S. Congress.
No pun intended.
Yeah. It could be the yellow submarine, but it was a black one. He said the Nazis have a lot of influence in Ukraine, and the extent of it is unknown. It is important to understand that the U.S. State Department and Congress has already deemed this group as terrorist, neo-Nazi, and anti-Semitic. This neo-Nazi regime will continue to expand, which means more weapons. There must be understanding that there is no legitimate government in Ukraine to sign anything with. Zelensky is illegitimate, and when the top is illegitimate, everything under it is as well. He then stated, and then the headlines now are kicking out, and I'll show it to you. He says, I propose the UN historical protocol of an interim administration in Ukraine and temporary rule in order to hold elections. That was the precursor to the headline everybody woke up to this morning and go, what happened? What's going on? Where did this call come from? So let me play the video, and it's yeah.
What's the point here? Changed? No. But in 2022, the State Department, citing that Azov had joined Ukraine's armed forces, decided that, well, the law was worded in a way that allowed support since it was integrated into the armed forces. But nothing really changed, and their views and actions remained the same as before. Now, even more so, these units, including Azov, plan to strengthen and expand their presence there. These divisions mean more weapons, supporters, and armed forces. If he's illegitimate, so are the rest. In this state of illegitimacy, neo-Nazi groups get more weapons and recruit new members. This could lead to them holding actual power, which means it's unclear who to sign documents with or what authority they have. It's uncertain because new leaders might come through elections, deny knowledge of previous agreements, and say goodbye. But even that's not the main issue. The real problem is that neo-Nazi groups like Azov and others are effectively starting to run the country. And the question is, how do we negotiate with them? In such cases, it's following a known UN peacekeeping path, external admin temporary rule, like in East Timor in '99, parts of ex-Yugoslavia. Hard to categorize everything because situations change fast. It's one option the UN uses. Overall, we welcome peaceful conflict resolution, but not at our expense.
Not at our expense.
So it's hard to know how to actually deal with someone who doesn't tell the truth as often as he does. You understand what I'm saying? Like he doesn't. So you're going to make a policy shift of having a new government based on the word of somebody who doesn't really tell the truth. See, it strikes me as not being a good idea. And like he only sprinkles in truth here and there. The rest is his agenda being pushed forward. And it's, yeah.
Well, I want to back it up. We want to do sources. We want to be factual. So this is what he's referring to. So let's call it Congress.gov. This started in 2022, the activity, the outbreak of the war. And the latest action was July 20th, 23. And it was HR 4799 of the 118th Congress. HR 4799 states to prohibit under the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative until the president certifies to Congress that the government of Ukraine is not providing funding, equipment, training, fuel, or other support to the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Azov Battalion, or any other neo-Nazi militia. This was there. But as you said, the U.S. lifted the ban on providing weapons and training for Ukraine's controversial Azov Brigade. And this is from PBS, and I could have pulled the other documents. But the reality is, so this is how he does it. He goes back. Well, he doesn't. His team. He go back. Look what the U.S. Congress did. But they don't follow it through to where the research was done, the lifting was done, we supply Azov. He just runs with that narrative. And unfortunately, if people aren't doing their own due diligence and are just sucking in mainstream media, they'll believe everything he said because, oh yeah, I remember U.S. Congress, they did that against the Azov. That's the problem we're facing.
It's kind of like if I let slip that you're sleeping with a woman, and I didn't say that this was your wife.
Correct.
I mean,
it's just
that's what we're looking at.
It's just ran with. Well, he's not finished. He's not finished. Putin on the yellow submarine, although it's black. The Russian Federation will not repeat the mistakes of trusting so-called Western partners. So now he's calling out EU, calling out US. Russian troops liberated more than 70% of the territories of the DPR. That's Donetsk People's Republic, Lugansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Britain behaves aggressively toward the Russian Federation, but they have an economy in 9th or 10th place in the world and a small army. We desire peace, but not at our expense. Now, I'm going to play the videos for you And then I'm going to ask you a question. So the first one is about the 70%.
As for the situation on the front lines, I want to emphasize again that along the entire front, the strategic initiative is fully in the hands of the Russian armed forces. Kherson, Zaporozhye, over 70%.
All right. Then we're going to go.
As
This
for the
one.
situation on the
Nope,
front
this one.
lines,
Here we go.
Russia ranks fourth globally in economic size and purchasing power. China's first, then the US, India, and Russia. Then everyone else, including Japan. Germany and others are lower. I won't even mention the UK. They're all always popping up here acting aggressively, but their economy is probably 9th or 10th in the world. So their armed forces, what, 100, 170 or 180,000 in total for Britain?
That's what he does. That's how he talks.
What do you say it was by? He didn't say by GDP, and that's the standard measurement. And by GDP, I think UK is 6th,
Okay.
and Russia is 11th.
There
So
you
he's
go.
playing fast and loose. He's playing fast and loose with the actual terms. It's if it's not that, it's very close.
Of course, but that's what he does. And
That's right.
so you're the professor and you always want facts. So you're sitting there and I'm watching you off camera while the video's playing. You're looking up the information to say, well, let me confirm
Yeah.
or deny if the guy's even speaking accurately. Now, let me ask you a question. So you've already talked about the GDP numbers. Let me ask you this question. And if you're watching from Great Britain, how do you guys think about when he calls you out like that? And your small army, and you're always popping up being aggressive.
Yeah,
Johnny
it is. It's 6 and
Pierce,
11.
Jonathan Fink,
I just
what do you
looked it
think
up at the
about
World.
that?
Just looked it up at the World Bank. World Bank last year's whatever 6th for Britain. It's United States, then China, then Germany, then Japan, then India, United Kingdom, France, Italy, Brazil, Canada, Russian Federation.
He's completely got it.
They're not even top 10.
Correct.
So, but he wasn't talking about that measure. It's kind of like I talk about this in my power and influence class. There's this lady who had this beautiful resume because of the way that she shaped the resume, right? She sold more magazines when she worked at this, or she expanded the publication, how many subscribers there were. She never made a profit. Right. So if you don't say that, like, sure, you could.
Correct.
So that's where he is.
All right. Well, let's look at one thing, and I just want to ask your opinion on this. Okay. What's your opinion when you hear, and I know this is not your expertise, but you do look at maps. Russian troops liberated more than 70%, and take off the word liberated. Okay. Invaded. Let's use the word invaded. More than 70% of the territories of Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson. Does that number seem accurate to you?
So my understanding is they have 90+% of Lugansk.
99.
They have. I'm sorry.
99.
Is that, not yeah. They have a very significant zone. Donetsk is something in that neighborhood, but I'm not sure exactly how much. Give or take 10%. It's like there's a big chunk of like a majority of Donetsk. But not of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, which are
Okay.
far less. And
Okay.
especially if you measure by population with huge cities over there, not just geography. So Luhansk is very solidly like just taking back a little bit in Luhansk last week was a big deal because, yeah. So tell me what the actual percentages are,
Okay.
if you know.
I do. He's accurate. 100%.
Who's
It's
accurate?
70%. Vladimir Putin. The numbers are right.
Yeah. For
Okay,
DPR?
Huh?
For
Donetsk,
Donetsk.
Lugansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson combined. I have done the math because to me, when I listen to it, and I do the maps all the time, I go, man, that sounds high. And then I dove into the maps while we were prepping for the
Well, but that's
video
because of the
and take
overweight
a
of
peek. Look,
Luhansk and the underweight of
that's correct. So basically, all of Lugansk.
Yep.
And I have the borders of each. L is for Lugansk, D is for Donetsk. What people do not realize is how much of the Zaporizhzhia region Russia already occupies. It's massive. Yes, we still have the big urban center of Zaporizhzhia, but the rest of it is extremely rural. As far as Kherson, it's overwhelming how much they control because then you have the river, you have the city of Kherson, and then nothing but rural farmland. So, of course, Crimea down there. So, unfortunately, it is about 70% that they forget liberated, that they have invaded.
Okay, so what percentages? So if there's 90% for Luhansk, that means that there's less than 70% over here in these others. So 65 or
Yes, it's like
60%
that.
in some of
But
these.
remember, Lugansk is 99%. It's
Yeah, yeah,
basically all
that's what I'm
government.
saying. So
Yeah.
if it's that high, it's got to be lower on the other side in order to get to 70. And then population wise, it's significantly different when you look at the population for like Zaporizhia or Kherson,
Okay, so
as I understand.
pre-war, I would agree with that. Right now, only Zaporizhia maintains a very, very large population, probably still pushing upwards of 1 million in the metro. Kherson's a ghost town. Kherson's a ghost town. You have a destroyed city, so the population base is not there. So on the K Oblast there, with what you see in the green, that's where Ukraine liberated. Um, it's really very few people. In Zaporizhia, there's a lot. In Donetsk, there's a lot. You still have pretty good population that has come back to cities like Izum, that were liberated, but you also have large populations still very close to the war, being bombed every day in Kramatorsk and Slavyansk and Konstantinivka and Druzhkivka. So there are larger populations, but when you come down Zaporizhia, you have Melitopol, you have Tokmak. When you go
Mhm.
to Donetsk, you have Donetsk urban, you have Mariupol, Lugansk, you have Lugansk city, you have Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, which were big urban centers that are completely gone. So
Yeah.
the people argument is, yeah, Zaporizhia, but it's war torn. Unfortunately,
Yeah, sure.
that's the real look, but definitely not a liberation. It's an invasion. Now, we've already had a Ukrainian official response to the yellow submarine. Ukrainian foreign ministry proposes establishing a UN interim administration in Russia in response to Putin's offer to do so in Ukraine. He
That's
said it
awesome.
seems that local residents would benefit greatly from any government other than Putin, who is spending billions of dollars on his criminal war against Ukraine. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Georgi Tuki. So we've got Ukraine's
After
response.
all, they don't acknowledge the legitimacy of the election, so that actually does make more sense.
And to bring this full circle, we also have an official UN response. So this is how legitimate this has turned in about 16 hours. That says in Ukrainian there that Gutierrez says that Ukraine is absolutely a legitimately elected government. No need for an interim government. UN Secretary General responded to Putin's proposal to introduce
But
external
see,
governance and said, no way.
look,
But,
again,
but
I'm going
yeah,
to come back to this with the spaghetti theory. I think he's just throwing stuff up against the wall, seeing what sticks. If something sticks, it's all upside. I was talking to a student last night in my organizational change class where um, she'd already decided to do this and she was about to leave. I'm like, look, go appeal, fight for that position, because if you already decided you're out, there's only upside. There's like you can only benefit from actually fighting with it. Now, that's the way that he's positioning himself, where there's only upside. If something works
mhm.
out, it's just fortuitous, right? Great. Okay, I win. But if not, like it's no harm. Like nobody's going to be like, you know what? I don't believe Vladimir Putin now because he didn't tell the truth on this one. We know you don't tell the truth. Like there's no downside. There's only upside, and that's what he's trying to do here.
Yes, and he does it very effectively. It's just sad that the United Nations even has to respond to such lunacy. But you see, it's just like you say, you push the envelope a little bit. The
But imagine
UN,
if
I
they
mean,
responded imagine if they responded his way though. That would be
exactly,
huge for him, and that was a
exactly.
possibility.
And correct. What we're seeing right now, though, and I'm going to put some more video later out, Zelensky speaking this evening, but we're starting to see Ukraine loosen up a little bit, and maybe you'll understand this. So when you see the foreign ministry now kind of start to troll a little bit and say,
Mhm.
okay, well, maybe we need a government in Ukraine. This is a little adjustment in strategy because Ukraine has been staying straight along, trying to garner as much support. Zelensky has been suppressing his ability to wax comedic and trying to be full diplomat mode. Even yesterday, he's calling Putin and the Russians dinosaurs who want to eat us. We just see.
You hear his comment about Wickoff?
Oh,
I would guess he's a pretty good real estate agent or real estate guy.
And listen, I'm full on board with this because they're under so much stress and pressure. Could you imagine the lunacy of what you have to hear when, okay, professor, you know what? You're an illegitimate professor. Your PhD.
Oh, I hear that all the
romper
time.
room.
You should see my comments. What kind of professor is he? Is he really a professor?
But think if you're the president of Ukraine.
My students might say otherwise.
Exactly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this co-production here with Professor Gerdes and myself. If you're on my channel and you haven't subscribed to Prof, please do, or vice versa. I don't know where else you're going to see all of the submarine video. Maybe others have it now, but regardless, you're seeing it here, and thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks for doing that, Greg. Because by the way, what happened. I got out of class last night, and Greg had texted me. I'm like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Oh, you got to see this video. It's nowhere else. This is the only place you're going to see it." So, and this is what Putin's doing. This is how he's propagandizing, and then it'll trickle down from him to other media, to American media and Western media and whatever else.
It takes a few
and
days.
then it'll be picked up in RT and off in Africa, and yeah.
Yeah, but I was watching it last night in the Russian. I go, holy moly! I can't believe what he's saying.
You need better hobbies.
Oh, it's so funny. It's just, but hey, it's not funny to the point where the UN doesn't have to respond.
No,
so
I understand.
Exactly.
This is it needs to be out there. All right. Well,
all right,
thanks, man.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one, guys.